evening, everybody, and welcome to our Children's Education and Housing Committee for this evening. First of all, we have, do we have any apologies?
Yes, through you, Chair. We have apologies for non-attendance from Councillor Tolley, with Councillor Ware substituting for him. Sorry. That's what happens. That's what happens when you leave the webcast running whilst you're webcasting. Yes, also to advise the committee that since the previous meeting there's been a change in membership. So Councillor Fiona Cole has come off the committee and Councillor Rosie Herring has joined in her place.
Item number 2, do we have any declarations of interest to declare? Take that as a no. Right, we move on to item 3, and I would ask you all if you believe that the minutes from our last meeting on the 2nd are correct. If I could just remind everybody just to put your phones to silence or turn them off, and also that we are live via webcam, so if we could all be using our microphones so we can be heard at all times when we're speaking. Thank you. So we move on to item 5, which is the future delivery of the social housing services currently run by the Northampton Partnership Homes. And if anybody is obviously following along on your laptops or with paper versions, these are pages 15 to 24. So we have some public speakers, and our first public speaker to speak is, can I invite Mrs. Lineker to come forward, please? Thank you.
I'm not very well at the moment, so I've come along because I think this is an emergency for MPH, for the housing group to be taken over by WNC. They haven't got many electricians. There's several bungalows, dampness, and I'm afraid I've had it for 2 years. There's no fencing done. Nothing is being done within MPH. You can't get them on the phone because you're number 15, and if your email goes or your special needs, you can't get through. They haven't got email. Older people sometimes don't have email. I'm very concerned about what they've not done. I've got an air conditioning emergency, and bloke come along, I forget his name, and he turned around and said, you need a new air conditioning. I'll call it in as an emergency. Where's the electrician coming? They've not called in, they've not sent a message, nothing. And this is what happens within MPH. I am thoroughly disgusted with them. I really am, and I would like to come back into in-house. I really would. I've not got my compensation for 24, and I don't think that's going to happen. I put it in on 23. I was refused by Mike Davis. No, someone by the name of Mr. Davis, the solicitor. All I wanted was my blinds. I didn't get my heating. I'm still paying for my heating with Octopus Energy, and they're letting me off so far, but not much. I still owe. I'm trying to catch up. And I think that's unfair. I had to dry it up. No painting's been done, nothing from that ceiling that was damaged, or the kitchen. They can't do it, apparently. Don't know why. And 74 had it, 72, 71, all along Drywell Court. The bungalows are very old. Through Development Corporation. And that was Tony Berry. I've got history with Labour, but unfortunately, I'm not Labour. I don't want to talk politics. I want to talk looking after the people. That's what matters. I'm finished.
Thank you,
Before
Mrs.
I start
Lineker.
crying.
Oh, thank you, Mrs. Lineker. Yeah, your points we do take seriously, and sorry to hear that you've had such struggles, but that's why we're here tonight, to obviously, and then that's what the Cabinet will be looking at taking forward, is the taking over of Northampton Borough, West Northampton Council taking over, obviously, the housing back in from the NPH. Yeah, okay. So we now move on to, I just would like to invite Jodie Archer, who is the Assistant Director of Housing and Communities, and also Emma Conway, Transportation Manager, to present to us this evening. Yes, Charlie.
Thank you, Chair. Before Jodie and Emma give their presentations, Mrs. Lineker, thank you very much for coming in this evening. No apologies needed. I hear what you're saying. I would say that I'm very glad. I've just come from a waste and litter management for 2028 working group, so I'm very glad I wasn't another minute or late, otherwise I'd have missed what you had to say. I can assure you we take it extremely seriously. I've seen an awful lot of very grave situations. I've seen an awful lot of good work being done in the time that we've been here, and in previous administrations as well, where people have listened and responded. In your case, it's fallen through the gap.
When I say we used to do scrutiny at one time, that all finished. Now it's a group meeting every 3 months, and that scrutiny needs continuing.
I can only totally agree with you.
I had to say something.
No, that's all right. That's all right, Mr. Lineker. I would say that scrutiny, transparency, improving the service is exactly why we're looking to bring this service back in-house. I have to say that at NPH, I know that you've had some bad experiences. I think there are some extremely good people at NPH who care enormously.
They're not treating them right.
Well, let's not go into that now, but I'm picking up what you're putting down. I mean, no, I understand, Mr. Lineker. So what I'm trying to say is that there is change afoot. I can only give you my assurance that the whole team here will do the best to make sure if you have a similar opportunity in a year's time, then you'll be in a happier frame of mind. I
hope so.
I'll do my best. We'll do our best. Thank you, Mr. Lineker.
I've just had a thought as well, Mrs. Lineker. For the elderly, there are cafes that NPH do. So I am prepared to obviously look up, talk to you afterwards, and see if there's one in your area, and I can get the details to you. I just thought that's something for elderly that.
On the next council meeting, and I'll speak there as well.
Okay.
And now back on email.
Yeah, okay, we can sort that out. Can I just invite Councillor Aldridge to come forward and speak to us, please?
Is that on this chair?
Oh, sorry, I wasn't expecting to speak.
This is my,
I feel obliged to speak.
it can.
So,
It's later, if she wants to speak on a later item, and is happy to stay for the meeting.
Yeah, you can speak later.
sorry,
You can come back later. You had some questions for the committee.
I did, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. We will move on to. We will leave that to later. Then I apologise about that to you and to all the councillors here. So we will move on to the committee and.
No, so it's for the officers to give the
The
presentation.
officers. Okay, so we will move on now to Jodie Archer and Emma Conway to present to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure who's got control of the slides for me, but I'm happy to just say move along. Thank you. So just an introduction for you all today, really. So in 2015, Northamptonshire Borough Council at the time set up an arm's length management organisation. ELMO is what we refer to it as. So that's Northamptonshire Partnership Homes. And that was at the time it was a 15-year management agreement, and that was put into place. The ELMO model during that period was very much around the local authority at that time having reassurance under the management agreement that it was being managed efficiently in the terms of the management agreement. It was a very common model that was done by local authorities across the country going back before 2015. And at that time, it brought a lot of money from central government to invest into council stock to bring it to a certain standard, which was a very, that was the appetite of local authorities at that time to establish the ELMO. In 2021, as you know, West Northants became a unitary authority, and at that time the management agreement simply transferred across from what it was at the time from MBC to WNC. And again, in 2021, it was very much around seeking reassurance that the management agreement was fit for purpose and that MPH were operating under that management agreement and those terms. Next slide, please. Okay, so as you're aware, so we've currently within MPH, we've got us as a council own 11,500 properties approximately across predominantly the Northampton area. So most of the landlord functions are managed through MPH under that management agreement. And the delivery of those functions are generally governed by MPH that have their own board, and then we look to understand what's going on within that management organisation, what their challenges are, and all of that decision mechanism predominantly was through the board. MPH have currently got around 350 staff, and that costs with an annual budget of 67 million a year in order for that to continue to operate as the ELMO. Additionally, in relation to housing, WNC have got the responsibility for housing allocations, homelessness services, and we work with around 30 registered providers. Those registered providers operate across the whole of West Northants Council, so not just within the Northampton location. Next slide, please. So the change within the landscape, as you know, we had the tragedy in relation to the Grenfell Tower fire, and out of that there was a significant inquiry that brought around lots of failings from statutory services, including the local authorities and so on. And following that inquiry, it was very much a decision that we needed to, as councils, have a more robust approach to the way that we manage council stock to ensure that there are safety elements considered and that we're ensuring that all of our tenants are living in very safe and compliant environments. And predominantly those findings did come out initially from that Grenfell disaster. In 2023, the social housing regulator implemented a change within the legislation. What that did was give the responsibility and the accountability around all of our landlord functions ultimately sit with WNC, with the local authority. So it may be that you have an ELMO, it may be that that is the operation that you have. However, rather than looking for reassurance, the big shift at that time was that the local authority needs to have absolute assurance, and that was around the consumer standards, health and safety, transparency, accountability, tenancy standards and so on, and making sure that as a local authority we were satisfied that we were making that our tenants were living in safe environments and that our properties were compliant around gas, around fire, electrics and so on. Oh, sorry, next slide. Okay. So just touching on the performance to date. So obviously the regulator placed a higher standard and there was a big focus around, as I've said, health and safety without wanting to repeat myself. WNC are responsible, that's the key thing, and all of the accountability and responsibility absolutely sits with the local authority. The journey that we went on for WNC, if I take you back to that point, so we became the responsible authority, and so we started to drill down into what we needed to give us assurance around our stock, around our tenant satisfaction, and the landscape of that really changed for WNC. We commissioned an independent organisation to come in and do a check initially on the biggest risk that we felt we needed to understand, and that was around health and safety. So that picked up on, as I've touched on, your gas and your electrics, overall stock condition survey, our fire safety. What we established through that report was that there were really grave concerns, and as a responsible organisation, we took the decision in September 24 to self-refer to the housing regulator. That was proactive engagement. We notified the regulator that we had concerns and that there was a vast amount of our stock that we had compliance concerns around, and we couldn't give ourselves assurance that we had compliance stock, that our homes were safe at that point. We self-referred all of that information to the housing regulator, and we're now in proactive engagement with the housing regulator on a monthly basis. Following that referral and the information that we provided the regulator around our compliance, so it was the health and safety, was that they made a decision to issue WNC, because we're the responsible body, with a C3 judgment. The housing regulator grades their judgment C1 to C4, C1 being okay, satisfactory, and then you can imagine as it works down. So we received a C3 judgment based on the lack of compliance that we could give evidence for around our stock. So there's extensive work that's underway. We have a business improvement action plan that we've worked with in partnership with MPH, ensuring that there's clear understanding of timelines, timeframes as to when key things need to be done to continue to do that journey of improvement. We share that on a monthly basis with the housing regulator, and in addition, every third meeting we invite MPH along to the meeting with the housing regulator so that they can also be checked and challenged by the regulator on any questions that they would wish to ask them. Emma, over to you.
Is that working? Oh, sorry, thank you. So in June 25, we took a cabinet paper and they made a minded to decision, which meant that we could undertake a tenant consultation, which is undertaken in accordance with Section 105 of the Housing Act 1985. We had an independent provider called Social Engine, so that we were very clear that it was independent. We co-created the questions both with Social Engine and MPH to go out to the tenants to get their views. The full consultation went to tenants and leaseholders, and we also ran a public consultation so that other stakeholders could have their say, including members of MPH team. The consultation ran from 8 weeks. We had sent over 35,000 emails were sent out because we did this in 4 different tranches to make sure that we kept reminding people to do it. We sent over 9,000 texts out. We sent 466 letters were sent out. So those letters were those where we had a bounce back from the emails, or we had a bounce back from the texts, or they'd said that that was the way that they preferred to be communicated with. So that we did across the board. And also Social Engine attempted to call each tenant so that if they didn't want to fill it in online, that they could do that, take that over the phone for them. And they had 1,303 respondents in that form, so that was really good. So overall, we had a 22% response rate, which was 2,699 tenants from the 11,500 tenants and 1,000 leaseholders. So the results from that were 10% of tenants did not support the transfer to WNC. 60% did. So, and when those percentages, that's a percentage of the 2,699 rather than the 11,000. So that we had 30% that were undecided, and some of the commentary that came back was they were unclear about the information and they wanted more information, so we've built that into some more of the plans. We held the public consultation. We had 62 responses to the public consultation, and less than 30% of that cohort didn't support the transfer. And just a word to say that of the 2,699 respondents, 93% of tenants and leaseholders understood that the transfer back to WNC would mean no change for their agreements or payments and service that they would receive. So in terms of next steps, in June 25, when the Minded 2 decision was made, we made a commitment to go back to the November Cabinet. Options appraisals have been completed to create and further explore the benefits and risks of bringing MPH back in-house. The original Cabinet paper stated that there's an anticipated transfer date of April 27 with a potential opportunity as a phased approach. So the options that we're looking at and taking to Cabinet in November look around both the 26 and the 27 dates. We're looking at a lift and shift of the entire organisation, and we're also looking at partial transfer of some services across both of those dates. A business case is underway to make sure that we fully understand the costs that are involved in this, because there will be one-off costs of doing the transfer. And both the documents have informed the Cabinet report along with the tenant consultation results.
Thanks, Emma. So just a bit of rationale behind our decision-making really here and the recommendations that we'll be putting to Cabinet in November. Almo's, it was a popular model, as I'd stated back in the beginning, of when it was established. However, now there are less than 20 Almos left across the country, and that's the reality as to where we are, and they're closing quite frequently. We're one step removed from that data still, so we want to collect and gather the assurance, but we're still one step away from that without it directly feeding into us as an authority. We're one step removed. We had the C3 judgment equally, and the concerns around the C3 judgment and the failures in relation to the compliance and other areas that we've since looked at. There's opportunity here in relation to efficiencies. So we pay a management fee as part of the management organisation, and 2 payroll systems, 2 procurement processes, 2 IT processes, and they're all opportunities to get this right and make efficiencies long term. The transfer would give us a really close relationship with our tenant base, and the customer journey could be only ever improved. One-stop council, that customer experience, that one voice, that one organisation, and hopefully would be closer to what our customers would expect from us as an organisation to improve that journey. that's kind of where, so the financial benefits, as they once were, being able to tap in and get money from central government is no longer in the way that it used to be. Thanks, Emma.
Thanks, Jodie. So if a decision is made at Cabinet in November, we've created a detailed implementation plan across multiple work streams, and we've worked this up with both officers within WNC and also MPH. At the moment, it's just task-based and time-based, so that when we know what option is chosen, then we can sort of start plotting that through. We've worked closely with the different work streams, so they're sort of enabling work streams that we call, so like HR, finance, etc., and also the direct housing management for frontline. The governance of this reports into the Housing Improvement Board, which is chaired by the Chief Exec, Anna, at the moment, and then Martin when Anna leaves, and then goes to Transformation ELT. A change in engagement plan has been created because it's really important. We did quite an extensive sort of understanding other people's lessons learnt. So a really wealth of information came from Newcastle when they did their implementation. So there's lots of things that we've taken from them, lessons learnt, etc. And we're also engaging the staff in MPH at the moment. We've got a survey out with them to ask how they feeling about the transfer and the things they'd like to see if the decision is made, how they'd like us to engage, what sort of communication they would like. And actually over 50% of their staff have responded to our survey, which is really, really encouraging, and hope that it shows that we're starting to be trusted. Myself and the change manager sit in MPH one day a week, and we're really starting to build those relationships. So we've created that change and engagement plan. And then we're looking at those phased options. So there's an opportunity, we think, to bring some of the a transition potentially earlier for some of the services. So going forward, the Cabinet report will be presented to EPB tomorrow. MPH briefing on the Cabinet, so it's really important that we tell the staff what's happening before the Cabinet paper is published. So we're doing a briefing with them on the 30th of October. The Cabinet meeting's on the 11th of October, which will consider the options and recommendations. And then if a decision is made to bring it back in-house, we will just need to do the formal approval from the Secretary of State. And that will depend on what the decision is as to when we approach the Secretary of State for that one. And then we will implement the decision.
Thank you. Is there any questions? Yeah, Councillor Herring.
Well, first off, I would have thought that as a scrutiny committee you would have shared the results of the consultation. I mean, just to give us, 10%, 40%, whatever. Normally I've seen actual responses listed down, and it's really helpful, particularly the 10% who didn't want to change. Some of the comments would be quite informative to realise what people are concerned about or worried about. So I think that should have been shared with this committee.
Okay, so we have a summary report which we've just got from Social Engine today. We do have the wider report as well, so I can share that. We have done a summary within the Cabinet report that sort of talks about the concerns from all sides, the positives and the concerns that people have got, but I'll take that on board. But the summary report, which will go into a bit more detail, will be attached to the Cabinet report, which I'm happy to share.
And then, obviously, this is for the scrutiny committee members. This is going to be one of the biggest decisions this council ever takes. South Northampton, Daventry had already sold off their stock, which was left, but the borough decided to keep it. But unfortunately, they've got some of the poorest stock in the whole district. In terms of the quality of the housing, and you're really going to have a lot of problems because some of the legal requirements in terms of damp and mould and asbestos and everything else some of the property probably can't even be brought up to that standard, and we will be utterly responsible. Jodie, was it the case that we can't, the government won't let us look at selling off the whole of the stock to another provider?
Thank you, Councillor Herring. So we looked at the stock profile and did a feasibility exercise, which is part of the Cabinet paper actually, which sets out consideration to actually dispose of the stock from ourselves. That is set out in the Cabinet paper, and the financial viability would leave WNC in such a negative financial position that wouldn't be an option, because we'd still have debt anyway that we wouldn't be able to claw back in relation to the sale off of the stock. So that is part of the Cabinet paper.
So we're between a rock and a hard place.
Councillor Fiona Baker, next.
Councillor Herring, thank you for that. Yeah, I've looked into that. One of my first reactions was, well, can't we get rid of it? It's a bit of a millstone, but it is a millstone we are unfortunately have inherited, and we are unfortunately stuck with. The viability of actually trying to bring that stock up to a level where we could probably sell it would be so exorbitant in terms of the actual cost to bring it up to where we could get rid of it, and then being saddled with the debt and having no revenue from the HRA account to pay that debt would just mean that we would basically be taking ourselves down a very dark route, which we wouldn't be able to come back from. So yes, we are between a rock and a hard place, but we'll try and chisel our way out of it. Thank you, Chair.
I just want to remind those that were there at the time, of which I know a few of us were, that we did put together a unitary council in 1 year. So I'm a bit of a loss to understand why it's going to take till 2027 to do transferring of this housing stock back into our business arrangements. So is there a time frame for this? Because it seems to be an awful long business for people to be uncertain, you know, whether we reassure people or not about their houses, they'll worry, because that's the nature of people, isn't it? So the long time frame of this all happening is a great concern to me, that I don't understand why this should take so long.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. I share your concern. There is, although I used this earlier today, actually, I wouldn't want to be too hasty about it. I don't mean to be flippant about that. One of the things that we'd like to do is to have a phased approach in. There are a number of staff to bring over. There are another different departments to bring over. If we do the lift and shift approach all in one move, I think that might be disruptive to staff and to the service. What we're looking to try and do is bring it in a step-by-step process as quickly as possible. The idea of April 27 being the date, that's a guide, not a target. That doesn't give us until then. And trust me, if we can bring it back in earlier, smoothly and in an orderly fashion, then we'll do it as quickly as possible. The idea is to do it so that we maintain the level of staff that we need to support the whole operation, keep the very, very, very good staff we've got there, integrate them into WNC, but not tripping over shall we say, stumbling blocks of learning curves in terms of, of integrating those staff, but definitely also making sure from an aspect of IT, payroll, HR, to pay, all that aspect, that can be done smoothly so we don't end up losing staff who feel that it's all just been too rushed. But trust me, if we can bring it back in sooner, then that's very much my and the Cabinet's view, that we would like to get it in and safe and sound as quickly as possible. Thank you, Chair.
We do have Councillor Aldridge and Councillor Harris wanting to speak, but I'd like to first of all come to the committee members and then allow you to have your points, if that's okay. So next we have Councillor Ashworth.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say thank you, Jodie, for your presentation. I know it's a difficult conversation to have, and we are where we are. I remember the Almo taking place, and I know the process can take a long time, and it's not easy as like a house move, you know, it does take time. I wanted to ask you about if our properties are in bad disrepair, say they're not fit for purpose or obviously they'll get transferred over, what would happen to those properties? Because obviously we do have lots of concerns around various areas of concerns with these houses, and some properties may not be livable due to the conditions they are. I mean, where do we stand with that?
Thank you, Councillor. So we've done a stock condition survey, and that brought us to a good understanding back in 24 as to what our stock profile looked like. So we've now completed 91% of our stock, and we've got a thorough stock condition survey out of what we need to do to bring our stock to that decent home standard that you're referring to. That stock condition survey has influenced our asset management strategy. So out of that strategy, we understand where we need to invest, at what point do we need to invest in our stock, whether it be new kitchens, new bathrooms, all of that is part of the asset management strategy. And that's over a planned programme. So if at the point the stock comes back in to us as direct management within WNC, we would continue with that journey, we'd continue with that improvement plan, and that is clearly set out in our business improvement action plan that we obviously update as a fluid process and then share with the regulator on a monthly basis. Okay.
Councillor Ware.
Thank you, Chair. Could you give us an update on where we're at with the business case situation? You mentioned that there was going to be a business case analysis and cost projections. Can you tell us where we're at with those? I'm a little concerned, just to pick up on my understanding of something that Councillor Hastie has said, which is the cost if we were to look to sell the properties would be cost prohibitive to actually get them into that state. If that's the case, that really worries me about these houses being fit for tenants anyway. If they're not at that level, we shouldn't be putting anybody in it. So can you give us a sense of where we're at with the numbers for getting this stock back up to scratch? And I appreciate it might still be work in progress. That's my first question.
So what we do know is that out of the stock condition survey, we identified 22% of our stock as being non-decent. What that means is that, so we did the stock condition survey, and then alongside that, we also did the HHSRS inspection, so the housing rating in relation to any risks that are really significant, and they categorised them. If there was anything that was a Category 1 hazard at that point that was identified, that was an emergency and that was rectified. However, as I've said, 22% of the stock that we currently own still needs to be brought up to that decent home standard. That's the position around stock condition. I'm going to let Councillor Hastie come in relation to the finances.
Yeah, thank you. I suppose the way I was portraying that, it might have been, I might not have explained it very well. My view on it is it's a little bit like if you were to take another asset, like say a bit of antique furniture, you might spend a lot of money renovating it, but not actually realise all that money back if you sold it on from the buyer. My view is that if we're going to spend that money to bring that 22% back up to where it should be, then we'll basically we don't pick up necessarily the benefit from the sale price as such. Does that make sense in some respects?
Not really.
Okay, well let me just try and explain and step in if you feel I'm not explaining it, Jodie. Basically, there would be costs involved with bringing those properties up.
And my question is, have we got a sense of what that cost is?
We are getting the sense of that cost, which is still part of the business case, but what our view is the fact that cost would be wouldn't be prohibitive to a sale, but it would kind of basically be, we'd be paying out good money to not necessarily be able to realise it back if we were to go down that sale route. But it's more to do with the actual overall stock. It's not necessarily what it would take to bring those properties that need to have attention to bring them up. We're talking about not just cherry picking what we sell off. We're talking about selling off the whole portfolio. That would not cure our long-term woes, because we would still have the debt associated with it.
Okay, my second question, if I may, Chair, thank you, is linked to Councillor Herring's question about it would be really useful to know why people weren't in favour of this move. But the wider question is, for scrutiny, it would be very helpful, even if it's at draft stage, to see a little bit more detail on what we're asked to be looking at. It's a bit headline, and it feels a bit overviewy rather than giving me the detail that I can actually question and understand and look at. So I think going forward with this sort of thing, it would be really helpful. I'm happy for things to say draft, not complete, initial working, but I think we need a little bit more detail to be able to do our job on the Scrutiny Committee to a full extent. Is there any way, Emma, that you could give us just a flavour of what that 10% might say?
You want me to step in on that? Yes, Councillor Ware, I think, and if I'm about to get pulled up, I'm going to find out very quickly. I think we should make that open and available to the Scrutiny Committee as soon as we possibly can. Shouldn't need to wait for a cabinet paper. We're very confident in the numbers and the information and the feedback, but let's be in the spirit of transparent and allow you to do your job. Let's give that information to you as soon as we possibly can. And also, I think we should also share with you the asset management strategy plan ahead of Cabinet and Council, give you a fair opportunity both as councillors but also as scrutiny, do the job that you're here to do, to keep us honest.
Just to add to that, as part of the consultation, I think we need to ensure that tenants feel as though their voice was listened to and that it was valued, and that we haven't just asked them to comment a yes, no, don't know, but actually we've drilled down into the detail behind what they've actually said, whether that be in favour of or against. And I almost want to, in my head, have a you said, we've recognised, we've done, and whatever the outcome is on what the tenants have shared with us as part of that consultation. So that's something that I've already suggested that myself and Emma want to pull together so that we can be transparent around those comments.
Absolutely. And I've just got a quick question, but we'll come to you, Councillor Heaven. And my question really is about, obviously, the condition of the stock, again, with damp and mould being a huge issue this time of year. And that is with the national government's law, the AWAB law that's coming in on the 27th of this month. Have we got enough manpower to actually be, carrying out those repairs?
Yes, in relation to resource. So as part of the legislation that's coming into play this month, we've set up a specific damp and mould team with clear guidance that's aligned to that legislation so that we're adhering to what we need to be doing. But equally, we're also wanting to understand the root cause analysis of those damp and mould cases as well. So really looking into the detail behind it. If we've got a block of flats and you've got 3 flats that are complaining of damp and mould, we need to understand the root issue, what's happening, to ensure that we can stop being reactive and really be proactive in solving these problems that we're facing. And that's, again, guidance that's coming out of part of the legislation as well.
Thank you. We go over to Councillor Heaven.
Actually, one of the problems on the damp and mould is that you can't just go in and wipe it and redecorate and think it's all going to be cured and go away. And one of the problems with the quality of some of the buildings is that they're Victorian solid brick walls and inherent dampness because of that. But one of the things I wanted to ask was, one of the biggest problems with MPH was the responsiveness to repairs and getting repairs done. And I know that they had difficulty themselves in recruiting and getting enough tradesmen, paying the right funds for the tradesmen and getting them to be responsive enough. Councils are not inherently fleet-footed over employing and being responsive for within 24 hours and so on for problems when they're reported. Are you convinced that you are going to be able to do the job better than MPH?
Yes, very good question, and yes, I am.
Councillor Ware.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow up on my previous question, are you able to give us a headline of some of the reasons that the 10%? I appreciate your comment, Jodie, but just a flavour of the headlines.
So in the Cabinet report, it just takes some of the things that came. So the most commented theme was around repairs and maintenance, with many tenants expressing feelings of dissatisfaction and neglect. And they had a genuine hope that it will improve under the transfer. Some tenants felt that the communication and transparency could be improved, with some stating that they were not aware it was happening, and this could indicate why we had the 30% that were undecided. That's why we've taken that and made sure that one of the things we've built into the comms plan, should we have the decision to transfer, is on a quarterly basis. We'll be sending an insert out with the tenant rent statements with an update as to where we're at with it, so that we're keeping those tenants up to date. There are mixed responses on the customer service and tenant satisfaction. Some tenants absolutely praised, as Charlie said, praised that they received good service, whilst others were very critical. Many tenants were concerned that simply transferring staff wouldn't necessarily address their underlying concerns, those ones that had expressed those concerns. Tenants indicated hopes for improved efficiency and cost savings if the transfer was to go ahead, hoping that it would be more streamlined and cost effective to run that service. And then across the public consultation, where we had 62 responses, 55% were in favour of the transfer, 29% were not, and 10% neither supported or opposed it, and 6% were unsure. And as I say, we open this out to the public, and also we encouraged MPH, those that aren't tenants of West Northants, gave them an opportunity to give their feedback as well. So I think we had a number of tenants that contributed to the public consultation.
Thank you, Emma, that's helpful. Can I also just ask, and the answer to this might be not in this forum, but you said that you'd done some staff consultation with MPH staff. Is there anything that can be shared? And as I say, I appreciate that might not be for this particular forum, but I would be very interested to know what the staff survey was saying as well.
It is still open, so we haven't done the analysis on it. So one of the things we asked for, would you like us to have a conversation? Would you like a one-to-one conversation? And 6 people have said yes, which again is really, gives me good hopes for the future of working together. We asked them things like, what are you most worried about? So, for example, the thing that is sort of top at the moment is around where they're going to be working, because that's what people are concerned with. The second is, will I still sort of work in the same team, and things like that. So we asked them to rank where they, they're most concerned, so that we can try and address those as we go forward. But we haven't closed the survey yet. So, but those are the sort of themes at the moment that we're asking, and we also, how do they feel about it? So.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the other thing that I've done, because was totally new to this, in terms of getting out and learning how an ALMO works, also working with WNC office and MPH, is I've spent a lot of time with MPH staff. I've got another meeting over there tomorrow. Not just this is a coalface sort of visit, again meeting the people that do the actual work. I've spent a lot of time trying to talk with anyone that's had issues from a client's point of view, and sometimes probably, I think it's Councillor Keeble might have said you're maybe getting a little bit too deep into individual cases, and you need to try and pull back up. And that's not a criticism of either of us. That's just a question of you suddenly start seeing things going awry, and you start getting directly involved, and you realise then that the officers are a better place to actually do it than certainly I am. So I've been trying to see warts and all. I've also seen some very amazing work done by WNC officers and MPH staff. I've had some, should we say, interesting comments initially from MPH staff. There was one Teams meeting where I think you got a little bit. There was a comment made that someone didn't realise they were making quite so vocally, and that was just a question. I think also because, and to be honest with you, reform is an unknown quantity in WNC. So there was this fear that what on earth, what was it going to be like to work for WNC, but not just WNC, but WNC under a reform administration. And I hope with the ongoing visits to MPH staff and reassuring them about their whole working environment, and I think a lot of them are extremely positive about coming to WNC. Yes, there are the issues about where they might park and where T's and C's on the toupee, but we are dealing with that. But I think by being human and talking to them about the situation and seeing the fact that it's going to work has been enormously beneficial for me to understand the issues, but also hopefully for them as well. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Fiona Cole. Not Fiona Cole. Fiona
It's all right. We're often confused. We've had for some time a discussion with MPH about accommodation, and in the past there has been discussions about where they would move to, and they wanted new premises for their staff, etc., etc. I'm sure you realise that we have no room for them here, because if you brought all... I understand from your colleagues that looking at working from home and bringing everybody back into work for the office, we have not got enough space in the office for everybody that would have to come and work here. So have you got a plan for where NPH are going to be, how they're going to work? Because that has been an issue in the past. And have you suddenly resolved that issue?
Thank you, Councillor. It is an ongoing process of determining that strategy about exactly where everyone's going to go. I know that assets are looking at the moment, and we are awaiting feedback from that. I'm not unduly concerned about how we're going to dovetail everyone in, but if I was to be perfectly honest with you, I haven't got the exact answer for you this evening.
Okay, do we have any more questions of the committee? Okay, I'd like to invite Councillor Aldridge to come forward with your point.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the report that you've provided. Really helpful. I've got a few questions, really, and the first one is about you've spoken about the assessments and the audits and the surveys you've done to make some judgments about where we are now. And given that historically we ended up with a C3, how robust are the processes for making those judgments and ensuring that they are accurate? And secondly, 22% of the stock is not meeting decent home standards. Is that an improvement, or has it been a deterioration? Because I'm assuming that at some stage there'll be a revisit to see the progress that we've been making. So that's a question. The other question that I have is around capacity building within WNC to take over the management of the stock and hopefully higher standards being achieved. So capacity building is really important, but within all of that are 2P processes which require quite a robust process to ensure that the right people are moved across to deliver higher standards. And that can be incredibly costly. So I just wonder whether there'd been some consideration of the implications of the costs around TUPE that would have to be addressed if changes are to happen. So those are my questions, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So we are still in a position where we've got that C3 judgment. So we know we've got the Business Improvement Action Plan that obviously we're working towards to continue to improve. However, that C3 judgment will not be lifted until the regulator does an inspection and is satisfied that we are in a more compliant position than what we are with this C3 judgment. In relation to our confidence with the sense check-in and the independent audit reports that we've had done for us, the whole reason that we had them done independently and separate was to ensure that we got the right skill set, the right professionals to come in and give us that right advice, again to give us the assurance. That was why it was completely separate from MPH, separate from WNC, and it was really key that we got that sound independent advice with their direction and understanding as to the current position that we're in. And all of that's absolutely been shared with the housing regulator as well, and that again forms part of those conversations. In relation to TUPE, there are absolutely financials built in, and that is a huge HR exercise, as you've alluded to. So as part of the Cabinet report, there will be costs associated to what it would look like for us from a financial perspective to bring back MPH, if that's one of the options that we take forward. So that's built into the Cabinet paper. I'm really not sure on the intricate details as to kind of line by line what that looks like and so on, but it's being worked through at the minute. And I think that it's going to EPB, as Emma had said earlier, tomorrow evening. So hopefully we'll be in a clearer position financially and resource-wise as to what skill set we need to enable that 2P process to happen properly.
Thank you. I'm going to invite Councillor Harris to come forward.
Thanks very much. So I hadn't actually prepared any notes and wasn't planning to speak, but there's a couple of things that have come to mind as I've heard the conversations this evening. First of all, language is important, and I find it slightly disturbing to hear about, we bundle it off and sell it off if we could. We've got a resident here, and at the heart of all of this are residents, and that's what I fear the most at the moment is the concerns that they may have. Yes, we have staffing issues, we have financial issues, we've got standards issues, we've got a whole basket of issues that we have to deal with. But at the end of the day, these are people's homes. People live in these homes, and already we hear that 22% of them are not at decent home standards. So that's the first thing. Can we please make sure that we remember that these are people's homes, and yes, they are an asset, and we can talk in those terms, but they are people's homes. The key thing that I'm slightly concerned about, I guess, is that we have the Cabinet reports going to EPB tomorrow. I don't know why this Scrutiny Committee isn't scrutinising those reports today. The timing is such that this committee could be seeing those reports and having insight. I know that we're talking about a fairly long timeline, potentially to 2027, so there's not like it's an urgency around it. But that's what this committee is for, surely, and it would have been, in my view, perfectly eminently sensible for this committee to have overview and oversight of that. It links to my other point, really, which is this is the Children's Education and Housing Committee. They are three massive areas that this council has to deal with on every level, and you could spend the entire time. It's a comment I've made before because I'm not entirely convinced we've arrived at the right structure from a constitutional point of view for scrutiny, but it strikes me that this is a very major project with lots of risks associated, lots of opportunities too, and I'm concerned that it won't get the focus that it needs and the scrutiny that it needs. So that's a plea. It's not a decision for this committee. It's probably a decision that needs to be considered at Democracy and Standards. But I think we should be seriously thinking about how do we give housing the time, energy, focus, scrutiny that it deserves in order to make this transition, because it's a significant one.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Harris. Yeah, I'll always try and be honest. So let's be honest. The numbers shown to me were that the idea of getting rid of the housing stock was just simply not a viable option. So excuse me for having just stomped over what you're quite rightly saying about the residents' homes. That wasn't my intention, and I apologise to all the residents and the committee if that was the impression I gave. It was kind of easy to say that we wouldn't bundle it up and sell it off. It was almost a question that I'm confident and I'm reassured that that's not the right attitude. So I probably didn't say it in the right way to reassure tenants that that's not the way I feel about their homes. I'm very much, and thank you for bringing it up, because if that is quite right, people may have had that impression. In terms of the second point, in terms of the value of scrutiny, I personally think scrutiny cannot be overstated, and I think an awful lot of problems in this country, and then certainly to a certain extent WNC, with more scrutiny, more transparency up front, and definitely more hard questions and less bumbling by me at times, for instance, in terms of that, I think is entirely welcome. I think if we can't robustly answer the questions, then we need to go back and look at it. As to giving the reports to a head of cabinet, I think the only thing we can, just elbow me if I say something wrong. Yeah, I would be happy to give as much, as far ahead of time to scrutiny and to make it available as I possibly can from a restricted, confidential point of view. So I will pursue that and get you as much information as I alluded to earlier. We might as well share it because it gives you time to have a look at it. And you're quite right. When I first joined and was given the MPH papers back in May to have a look at for doing in June, it was made clear that it was probably going to be the biggest choice in the 4 years, which was, I mean, no pressure. But in that time, I can assure this committee and and yourselves is that I have tried to immerse myself in MPH as far as possible. I think I have a better understanding than probably I ever necessarily thought I was going to get. So I have been out, I've worked with the officers. So in answer to your question, let me clear it with powers that be, and let me get you as much information in a timely fashion to make let everyone have a good, thorough look at it.
Thank you, Councillor.
I think the idea really was to have the information before we do the scrutiny, which obviously we're trying here to do the scrutiny before we've got the information. So if we're able to get the information, and even if it's after, if it has to be behind closed doors, I think we need another meeting of our scrutiny committee once we've got the information that we need in order to be able to ask those questions. Because at the moment we don't really know what we're asking questions on because we haven't got that information.
I'm looking over at James a little bit there. I totally hear what you're saying. I would have no problems about if there was an extraordinary, again, if there was, I need to check with legal and governance about what I'm saying here. I can actually back up, is if there had to be, or that information given, I don't see any reason why we couldn't do another scrutiny meeting once you've had all that information. Is there any problem with that?
Yes, so through you, Chair, if what was sought was an opportunity for scrutiny councillors to provide, challenge, test, give views on the proposals ahead of them going to Cabinet, then the only way of doing that is not to hold a scrutiny committee. In fact, it's probably possibly the least effective way of doing it. There would be far more flexibility to hold a workshop, a working group, a one-off working group style session involving committee members. Holding an additional scrutiny committee would come with all the formality that comes with a formal meeting.
Just to say that you did say that this was one of the biggest things that we've had to do, apart from setting up in the first place, which I keep going back to. It is a really big thing, and as Councillor Harris said, it affects a lot of people's lives. And I think it would be really good for all of our benefit if we actually did have proper scrutiny done on this before it's all signed and sealed and delivered and we're just given a fait accompli.
I do think it would be good if we had, as James suggested, if we had a workshop with all the committee, if possible, that we could, hear, we could scrutinise, we had more opportunity to ask questions, to see all the data, see all the feedback from the resident surveys and other surveys, bridge the gap where there's 10% of residents, not happy, and certain residents 30%. So that would be beneficial to us as a scrutiny committee, I feel, to have a workshop. We were going to Councillor Ware first and then Councillor Erin.
Thank you, Chair. May I even suggest that it could make Cabinet members and council meetings a little bit more efficient and effective. If we can do scrutiny in the right forum, we are going to be aligned, we're going to be contributing, we're going to get to two cabbages make a lettuce sort of situation. It will be better to do it in that proper format and give everybody the opportunity to contribute and add value.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, not talking about this specifically, but scrutiny generally. For any administration at any authority, any time, if you're sharing your ideas, your draft proposals with scrutiny, then you take a risk. But the trade-off for that risk is the Cabinet member potentially being in a position of going to Cabinet and saying, here is what I'm proposing, it's been through scrutiny, and scrutiny are supportive of it.
I think that's what I wanted to make clear for tomorrow, is that it is quite usual for them to say, has it been to scrutiny? Oh, yes, it's been to scrutiny. Tick box. And I think we need to make sure from this committee that we make it quite clear that we were not fully appraised of all the information, and that we're not actually condoning or endorsing that decision. We would like to look at it further, because obviously, ultimately, there is the possibility of, if the councillors are not happy with the decision of Cabinet, that it can be called in. So, we don't want to get to that stage, and I'm sure we all get the right information, but we don't want a Cabinet to be told, oh, it's been to scrutiny and everything's fine.
So through you, Chair, it sounds like the request emerging for the discussion from the discussion is a one-off working group style meeting for committee members to take place at an appropriate point between the 21st of October and the item going to Cabinet on the 11th of November. Is that a fair summary?
Charlie.
Yes, that is what we're asking for, Chair, I think, in the spirit of openness and transparency. And if I've said anything wrong or overpromised, then I'll no doubt we'll be talking to another Cabinet member when it comes to that workshop.
I think everybody is happy with that. We're all happy with that, the committee. And
just in the interests of practicality, I think, Chair, there will be far more scope to do that if it's held online rather than in person, which being a working group rather than a formal committee meeting, it can be. And I would not want to be too optimistic about the challenges involved in finding a free date between now and the 11th of November, but we will do what we can.
Thank you, James. Do we have any more points on that? I think we have concluded that we will move forward with an online workshop.
Chair. Yeah. So there were some requests which I think were received positively for further information arising during the discussion. Is that all going to be picked up in what is presented to this meeting? So things like further information on the results of the consultation, on the asset management plan, and on the potential options being considered. So that would seem to be what goes into the workshop, and then any comments, recommendations from Scrutiny is what comes out of that workshop rather than today's meeting.
Yes. Yeah, I believe that's correct, so that we can make that informed decision as a committee moving forward.
And I think what may also come out of the workshop is any views from Scrutiny about what engagement it has, what work it may do on this massively important issue going forward from here. So the Cabinet is due to take a decision on the 11th of November about how to move forward with this. There'll then be a process of implementation. Scrutiny may want some involvement in that, or certainly possibly some oversight of how that is progressing. So I think there's something for Scrutiny to consider as well about what more it may want to do on this, but again, that can potentially be picked up in the separate session too, if members are happy with that.
Charlie.
Thank you, Chair. I think, yeah, that's broadly speaking what I think we're all in accord on. What I would suggest is that if we can provide in one clip, say ahead of that workshop, the results of the survey and the asset management delivery plan. If we can do that ahead of that, why don't we deliver it via email to the committee so that they've got
time to read it?
Yes.
Please. Yes. And digest. Yes.
So that'll be on the 10th of November.
I still haven't got over the idea of having a cabinet meeting on the 22nd of December.
At this rate, they'll probably be my baubles, I expect.
Okay, we're all happy with that.
Yes.
So we'll move on to item 6, which is the Scrutiny Prioritisation Toolkit. And if anybody's following along on your laptops or manually, it's pages 25 to 28. And over to you, James.
Chair. So this is intended to be an additional tool for Scrutiny that assists you to make best use of your resources by focusing them on the most important, most worthwhile things, essentially. So it emerged from an idea that originated with Councillor Hayes as who's chair of the Democracy and Standards Committee. So it made the point, well, there could be a more systematic approach for scrutiny committees to take to decide how to prioritise between different items in their work programmes. I think we, through the existing WNC overview and scrutiny framework, there was that process for deciding how ideas got into scrutiny committee work programmes, but if you've got several good ideas that the committee might work on, how do you decide which gets the priority? So Democratic Services did a piece of work taking account of good practice in other areas, and resulted in the prioritisation toolkit that's before you now. So essentially sets out a two-staged approach for deciding relative prioritisation between topics that are agreed for inclusion in scrutiny committee's work programmes. And I should emphasise here, this is very much focused on the major pieces of in-depth scrutiny work, not on items for committee meetings, although there could be some merit too in applying those principles to all areas of scrutiny work. So this was presented to the Overview and Scrutiny Triangulation Group at the start of September. For members who may be less familiar, the Overview and Scrutiny Triangulation Group is a meeting of the chairs and vice chairs of each of the three Overview and Scrutiny Committees, the Cabinet members and the Council's senior officers. Triangulation Group was happy with the process and the work that had been done, and agreed that it should be introduced and for essentially a trial for 6 months or so, and then reviewed by the Triangulation Group at its next meeting, which will be relatively early in 2026. So as I say, this is not intended to be overly prescriptive or dictatorial. It's intended to be a tool that could be used by overview and scrutiny committees should the need arise, and the scenario in which the need would arise is if a scrutiny committee has got several in-depth pieces of scrutiny work that it's agreed to include in its work programme, and it needs an objective, an evidence-based process for deciding the relative priorities between those pieces of work. So I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
I just wanted to say that we'd already considered this actually in the adult scrutiny committee, and firstly we said hopefully James will be the one that tries to put all those coloured blocks and things into the request and then discuss it with the chairman. But presumably the one thing I don't remember saying was that when you've gone through that process between Democratic Services and the chair to actually allocate high, medium, low priority, presumably that will be brought back under the work programme to, just in case we vehemently disagree with which category you've put it in.
Yes, so ultimately the decision would be by the committee as a whole. The process of getting there would be supported by whichever Democratic Services officer is supporting whichever committee, and it certainly would be supported. It wouldn't be Democratic Services dictating what you do. And yeah, the point has also been made. Well, does each committee need to have a lead councillor, a champion, perhaps for using this thing? And the very sensible position I think that was arrived at the triangulation group was logically that would be the chair, possibly the vice chair as well. So yeah, that's how it would all fit together, and ultimately the committee would make a decision, but hopefully a more informed and objective decision than might possibly be the case with if this thing hadn't been created.
Councillor Ware.
Thank you, Chair. I think anything that helps make a decision effectively is a good thing, but the thing is effective. And what's missing for me in this is how we will be nuanced. So decision-making tools like this usually have a weighting system with them. This doesn't. It is quite two-dimensional in that respect. So I think as long as we have a mechanism for qualitative input into this, and if that is the committee actually saying, well, the numbers look like that, but that's not what the feeling of the committee is, then it's a good thing. But I think I would just like the paper to be a little bit clearer on how we are going to nuance the decision and use qualitative data within it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that might be something that could be built into a future version that once we've had experience of testing the existing one. But having said that, I think that's the sense of it. That ultimately it comes down to a decision by the committee, and I think there is room in that for the committee to take both a qualitative and a quantitative view. If you had a situation where there were two potential scrutiny reviews, one scored higher numerically than the other, but the committee still felt that the lower scoring one should be proceeded with, then I think the committee would stand or fall on that decision. You could take it, provided there was justification for doing so, and yeah, you would need to argue for that decision if it was challenged. But yeah, there's scope still to take it.
I think just to add to that, we don't always know what the national government's going to do, and that, you know, there could be changes in any one thing that we decide to scrutinise. So that would have some sort of balance. And, you know, as James said, this is not prescriptive, and certainly as a chair, we're all in the committee together, and you know, we'd look at that as and when. Is the committee happy to note this? Okay. So we now move on to item 7, which is the review of our work programme.
Thank you, Chair.
Pages 29 to 34. And over to you, James.
Thank you, Chair. So this, in part, is the standard item which comes to each meeting of the committee to present the latest version of its work programme, for you to review the work programme and add, amend, take things out of it as you think is necessary towards the aim of ensuring that the committee's focus is always on those areas of scrutiny that have the potential to make most difference, have most impact. So the work programme, as things stand, is set out pages 29 to 32, identifying the items that the committee has previously agreed it wants to come to its future meetings. The additional element to the item today's meeting is the scrutiny review proposal that has been submitted by Councillor Keeble for an in-depth scrutiny review of the NPH housing stock and the intended to address the issue of disrepair in social housing in the district. That obviously touches on the earlier discussion, and I think, as with all scrutiny review proposals, there is an onus on the committee to review it objectively and to consider the relative priority of the proposal compared to any other things that the committee might do, and to consider how the proposal fits in with any existing work on the topic in question. And clearly, in this case, there is much being done on the topic already. And it's an area where that work is also subject to oversight by the external regulator, So I think with this topic, there's a real onus on the committee to consider how it would add value if the committee chose to pursue it to what is being done already. Otherwise, Chair, I'm happy to take any questions on the general work programme.
Okay, we have Councillor Ware, then Councillor Ashford, then Councillor Heaven.
I wonder whether Councillor Keeble's proposal might sit well with place and finance scrutiny rather than this scrutiny, given specifically her key objectives, and might that be a way of adding a different dimension of discussion into this?
Sorry, I think, Chair, that fundamentally this is a housing topic and this committee has that area of responsibility. I can see it clearly has, if pursued as proposed, it clearly has financial implications, because the review is talking about identifying the cost of work to get homes up to the decent home standard and identifying sources of funding. So there may be some crossover, but I don't think that this piece of work, it might sit partly outside the remit of this committee. I don't think it sits wholly outside the remit of this committee.
Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with James. I think this is definitely a housing matter, and it does sit into areas. But having seen the disrepair and the concerns from residents in my particular ward, I think it is a subject area that needs to be really discussed at full length, because as Councillor Hasty said, these are, as you mentioned, these are real people. They live in these homes, and we can only contemplate the conditions that they're living in with their families. And this is not the forum where we can just push it to a side and say, right, everything's okay. And I think, we've discussed this at length, and we've decided this is the way we are going to be able to make a contribution while we have all the other things that's going on with the NPH, coming back into the council. And I think it's really timely that we can have this discussion alongside the other programmes. But I think this one's really important right now. Thank you.
I think that it would be premature to launch a work stream on this until we've just had the workshop, actually, because I think we may need to consider it alongside other aspects of the work going forward on housing. Really, what this is asking is, should there be a decision to bring it in-house, how are we going to improve things, keep things going and keep improving in the meantime? So it feels like a stopgap type thing, and I think it would be better incorporated into our discussion and the workshop on the MPH decision, personally.
Do we have any more questions or points to raise? I would just like to say that I agree with you both. We're all about children and obviously their families. We're about the children in those families and the social care of those children. So, Councillor Keeble has mentioned in her scrutiny proposal form improving life chances. And we want to do that. We're about social care of the children. So, but I totally agree with you, Councillor Heaven, that we should have our meeting first, and we should take a well-rounded view, and we should see what comes out of that before we rush in to scrutinise this. Do we have any more questions? Charlie. Oh, sorry, Councillor Harris can come forward.
It's all right, it's fine.
It's just a comment. I appreciate I'm not on this committee, so it's not really for me to say. But I think I would agree with the point you've just made. I think there's been a big topic of discussion tonight around the housing issue, and it strikes me that it would be better for you to move forward with the plan that you've just adopted and see how this sits with it, rather than treat it as something as an aside, because I suspect there will be duplication.
Yeah, thank you for your comment, Councillor Harris. Yeah. Do we have any more questions? Councillor Hasty.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I hope from this meeting, I think we've given the idea that certainly we recognise the importance of this decision and welcome scrutiny from all avenues and aspects to make sure that that we are in a difficult situation making the best possible choice, which I think we are. But I am wary about duplication. I am wary about resources and time, officers and members. And although I think there's great value in scrutiny on this particular thing, I totally agree with the proposal to work alongside with this workshop, as Councillor Harris said, because after all, the action plan and the business improvement plan that's in place is, after all, is being effectively done by the regulator of social housing, which is the ultimate scrutineer. So working with this committee, I think helps the WNC move to continue the work, which I think I have to say the whole team in housing has done a fantastic job with the regulator, right from the point of basically contacting in the first place, and I think the improvements is being seen and is being monitored by the regulator. So we've got a definite top-down level of scrutiny going on that is allowing. But the benefit of the experience of this scrutiny committee to help steer that, I welcome entirely.
Thank you. Councillor Heaven.
If the decision is that we're going to bring this into the workshop, we will need some information on this topic as well, in terms of the stock condition survey and where we are with that. So a paper that informs us as to where we are with that, so that we can have this piece of the jigsaw along with all the other items. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, Chair, I give the assurance to the Scrutiny Committee that I'll give as many pieces of the jigsaw as I can possibly find.
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
Chair, if I might be able to leave, because you probably weren't here when I told my sad story about my car key, but my lift has arrived to take me home because I've lost my car key. So apologies.
Find it. Bye-bye. Do we have any more questions or points to raise?
So it sounds, Chair, as if the committee wants to revisit this after the workshop. It's not saying yes and it's not saying no tonight. I mean, I think at the risk of reiterating earlier points, I think it does need emphasising, though, that the easiest topic for scrutiny to deal with is one where no one else is doing anything, because scrutiny then has a completely clear playing field. It doesn't need to coordinate or dovetail with anything else. This absolutely is not one of those situations. You've heard tonight about the amount of work that's being done under the business improvement plan, and you've also heard that is subject to significant oversight by the regulator of social housing. So the room for scrutiny to do something on that is affected by that framework. I mean, it's a paradox of scrutiny that an area that is so important that it merits scrutiny is likely to be precisely the area where there's already an awful lot of activity, precisely because of that importance, and that's absolutely one of these. So there would be a real question on this piece of work as to what, if anything, scrutiny could add that isn't being done already.
Yeah, I take that point. I think we just need all the information before we go ahead with anything on that and our meeting. Yes. And other work, we've got the work plan before us, our work programme, and I can see that, you know, in December we are having some topics on youth, and you know, I put it to the committee to maybe think about, we heard last time about CAMS and mental health in youth, and also the wait well, the youth waiting well, and we heard that it was more about waiting safely. So I wanted to just put it out there whether we would be able to scrutinise something on the wait well, and in terms of youth and young people's mental health, and if there was any improvements they could make in that area. Do we have any thoughts on that? Councillor Herring.
Obviously, I wasn't on this committee for that item, but just to say that the previous administration did a great deal of work on CAMS. Obviously, as a result of what we did, things have moved forward, but I would like to at least send you a copy of the work that we did as from this previous administration, which might help inform where you go with that. But there's been improvements and changes, but not far enough and fast enough.
Thank you. I think that would be most beneficial. Thank you for that, because of course we don't want to be duplicating anything, but we do want to be driving things forward in the right, well, we want to be recommending proposals to the Cabinet and scrutinising where it's most useful.
James, you can send that across, can't you?
The committee previously identified that it wanted an update on progress with the SEND Priority Action Plan as a standing item. It had that in September. Does it want to request that again at the next meeting on the 1st of December, or is that not a sufficient gap for anything to have changed to merit a further update?
I personally think we may have that into the new year, but I appreciate any committee members' thoughts there. Councillor Ashworth.
I would like it to be considered in December. I know we can defer it, but it is a concerning subject, and it's quite a massive area. I wouldn't want to keep postponing, because then it means we're just passing it on to another month I would really like it to remain in December, if possible, please. Thank you.
Yeah, but your point's taken, because January does have quite a lot of points for us to look at. Councillor Herring.
I think that might be an area where you want to look at what's happening at central government, because I think there's a lot happening, and knowing when times of announcements are going to come out about any changes, I think may be beneficial. I don't know, but I'm sure we can find out.
Invite you forward, Councillor Aldrich.
Yes, I completely agree with Councillor Herring. There are some transformational changes over the horizon for SEND, and we've obviously got our own challenges around potential re-inspection coming up. and we're expecting that probably in the next 6 months or so. So I think the combination of the two is a lot of kind of focused activity that should be reported to this committee. But I agree with you, Councillor Herring, that December is too soon. I think once we know what the national direction is going to be, and I'm aware from other sources what the details of some of that is, I think it would be worthwhile waiting for that. But could I take this opportunity, Councillor Atkins, to just say that the other area that is relates to the motion that was unanimously approved at a full council meeting was around the youth strategy. And I'm aware that some work on that has started, and there is going to be a youth strategy in draft produced for consideration. And I just wondered whether that was an area that the committee may wish to have a look at, because that's quite a significant area to be focused on. So perhaps, you know, that's an area to look at as well.
In December, Councillor Aldridge, we have got a lot on the youth strategy, and we are hearing about the 0 to 19 services and how that would feed into it.
So, through you, Chair, I asked about the SEND priority action plan item, and one committee member argued for it to come in December, and another committee member suggested it shouldn't. So I need a bit more of a steer from the committee than that, please.
Do we have any more thoughts on that? Any of the councillors?
And sorry, through you, Chair, I should add, it's not. I don't think it's meant in the sense of postponing it or not dealing with it so much as making the best use of participants' time by not having an item on the committee agenda if there is essentially nothing to report, because it's too soon after the previous report.
So I'd like to put it all to the committee members, a show of hands who would like that in December and who would like to wait for a few months. Yeah, so if you'd like to have...
Sorry, Chair, can I just ask, when we say wait, I mean, just after Christmas you've got the budget set in and all of that. I mean, it's going to obviously defer. I'm not one to stop in the progress of things, you know. We don't have luxury of a lot of time. I mean, I'm comfortable with whatever the majority goes with, and I'm just thinking about time frame to try and fit everything in. So I'll leave it to everyone.
I'd like some advice or some horizon scanning, if you like, to say, you know, where is the government in this? Is there going to be some major announcement in January, or is it going to be kicked into the long grass? But I feel, you know, and we've been advised as well from other sources that there's a head of steam brewing, and that there is going to be some major announcements on the SEND, and particularly the travelling expenses as well for SEND children. So there seems to be a lot happening, and it doesn't seem sensible to be doing any major piece of work if it then all gets undone because the next month the government announces something completely different. But I don't know what the timescales are.
I think we would just be having an update on the plan. We wouldn't be launching into any scrutiny as such, so to speak. Do we have any more thoughts? Did you want to say something, Vice Chair?
Yeah, thank you. It's either December 1st or 27th of January, so it depends if people want to wait. I think that's where the comment comes from for waiting. It's either December or January. If people then want to wait until there's a major update from the government as well, then we can then look at, after that'll be March, 16th of March. So it's up to the committee, I think. We will need to hear an update first, and then we'll have to decide about what's going to happen with the government's updates on SEND as well.
That's right.
Chair, through you, I can ask the service lead. The committee would like to have the next update either on the 1st of December or the 27th of January, can they give some advice about which would be the best timing for that?
I'm happy with that. Is everybody happy with that? I think that's the most sensible solution. Just looking at our proposed work programme, looking at the topics we've got coming forth, to me it looks like December would be better, but let's get the expertise and the opinion of the officers that are doing this every day. Okay.
Is the committee otherwise happy to note the work programme as it stands? Thank you. No urgent business.
No, I don't think we have any other bids so that concludes the meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Bang on, time-wise. I'm getting